I was sitting on the edge of the bed in my hotel room in downtown Atlanta, tugging the knot of my tie tighter as the city buzzed 12 floors below me. The soft glow of the desk lamp cast long shadows across my notes for the client pitch I had in 30 minutes, an enterprise logistics platform that could close a $2.6 million contract if I didn't fumble the delivery. I had done everything right. Polished deck, rehearsed lines, and a week of back and forths with the client's legal team to address concerns before I even set foot on that stage. That pitch was supposed to be the highlight of my morning. But instead, my phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Sierra. I stared at the screen for a moment, thumb hovering. The last time we spoke, her voice was all venom and velvet, passive-aggressive wrapped in faux sadness. I had no reason to pick up, but I did. Curiosity? Closure? Maybe I wanted to hear her voice one last time before I let the lawyer do all the talking. Her smile hit me first. That smile I used to know like the back of my hand. But this one had teeth. She looked like she'd just scratched a lottery ticket and saw 6 zeros line up. Her skin glowed like she'd finally figured out how to be happy, except she never did glow like that with me. Beside her, flopped across the sectional couch I bought with my bonus from the Zinco deal, was Bryant. He looked like he hadn't showered in 2 days. Wrinkled t-shirt, smug half-grin, arms slung over her shoulder like I was supposed to flinch at the sight of it. "We changed all the locks," she said, like it was a game show and I had just been voted off the island. "You don't have a home anymore." I didn't blink. Not once. I smiled. Calm. Cold. The kind of smile you give a mosquito before you slap it dead. "You done?" I asked. Sierra tilted her head, hair falling just right like she practiced that posture in the mirror. Bryant flexed a bit, probably without even realizing it, trying to look intimidating, like some placeholder alpha. I leaned in just a bit, enough for my voice to slice through the static of their performance. "Funny how brave they think they are," I said, voice low, steady, dangerous in its restraint. Then I tapped the red button. Ended the call. That was it. 3 seconds of silence filled the room before I leaned back in the chair and exhaled slowly. Not because I was angry, no. That came later. Right now, I was taking notes. Mental snapshots of every expression on her face, every frame in the background. The painting she used to say didn't match the living room? Still hanging on the wall. My Montblanc pen resting on the side table. The hum of my refrigerator in the distance. The same one I had installed when she claimed the old one was too loud to be modern. That wasn't just my house. That was my life. I stood up slowly, shoulders stiff, hands curling into loose fists. The pitch would have to wait. Or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I'd walk into that boardroom and deliver the sharpest presentation of my career, because now I had something better than motivation. I had focus. I had clarity. They had tried to rattle me. She had tried to make me feel small. Homeless. She forgot one thing. That house. My name was on the deed. On every utility bill. On the renovation contracts she never bothered reading. I paid for every tile, every knob, every security system camera, including the one I knew was still hidden in the bookshelf behind the living room couch. I opened my laptop, pulled up the client file, rehearsed my opening line in my head once, twice. Then I paused, opened another tab, logged into the home security dashboard. Offline, of course. She probably thought turning off the Wi-Fi would kill the camera feed. Cute. But the external hard drive in the garage was still recording. Battery-powered. Self-synced. And I had access to it through a proxy. I'd check it later. Right now, I had a pitch to deliver. But as I walked toward the mirror to straighten my collar, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same man who left that house 3 weeks ago with an overnight bag and a hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd come to her senses. That man had tried. He had offered therapy. He had forgiven the first lie, the second silence, even the third time she said she was staying late at Pilates. This man? He was calculating. He wasn't going to raise his voice or send a furious string of texts or beg for explanations that wouldn't make a difference. No, he was going to move with intention. Quietly. Surgically. As I slipped on my blazer and adjusted the cufflinks Sierra gave me 3 anniversaries ago, I looked at my reflection and almost laughed. I didn't lose a home. I had just been handed a reason. A reason to rebuild. A reason to be smarter, colder, and 2 steps ahead. She wanted war. She just didn't realize I'd been trained for it in silence. And that call? That was the declaration. The pitch went flawlessly. I smiled, charmed, closed. Walked out with a handshake and a promise of follow-up. But as I stepped into the elevator, I pulled out my phone and texted one person. Malik, she started it. His reply came seconds later. Malik, then let's finish it. The thing they never tell you about betrayal is how it sneaks up on you, not like a slap or a scream, but like a slow leak in the ceiling you don't notice until the roof caves in. I sat in the back of the Uber, Atlanta skyline receding behind me, and all I could think about was that damn house. Our house. Well, no. My house. Bought in my name. Financed with my credit. Inspected, negotiated, and paid for by a man who believed he was building something permanent. Sierra posted it on Instagram the day we closed. New beginnings with my best friend ring house with ardent sparkles. She didn't mention I was the one who wrote the check. She never did. I remembered the way she floated through the foyer on move-in day, barefoot and sipping wine, pointing out where she wanted the velvet bench and the oversized mirror from that influencer's home tour. She called the guest room the glow-up suite and made sure the lighting was perfect for content. I didn't complain. I was too busy on calls with investors, handling the back end of a startup acquisition, and making sure the mortgage was paid 6 months in advance so she could breathe easier. 6 years of marriage. 3 of those in therapy. Weekly sessions that turned into one-man confessions. I'd sit across from her and Dr. Goldstein, recounting my faults, apologizing for absences, for tone, for exhaustion. Sierra would offer tight-lipped nods and vague commitments to try harder, and I'd cling to that as if it meant something. It wasn't until the final year that I started to feel the tilt. Not at first. It was subtle. Her phone tilted away during dinners. New gym memberships across town. Bryant entered our world as a name only at first, my trainer. I even paid his invoice once, not realizing who I was subsidizing. She said she needed help reclaiming her body. I thought I was being supportive, but every session was a doorway. Every squat, every rep, another secret built between them and layered over me like dust. I knew she was drifting. I just didn't realize how far until I came home early from a canceled conference and found her phone unlocked on the coffee table. Not by accident. It was open to a group chat, her and 3 girlfriends, laughing over a picture of Bryant shirtless in my kitchen. One of them said, "Girl, if you ever leave your man, take the trainer with you." Sierra replied with a string of laughing emojis and the words, "Or maybe I'll just keep both houses." I didn't confront her that night. I made dinner. Grilled salmon. She said she was tired and took it to the bedroom. I sat at the table alone, chewing shame and seasoning. That was when I realized I wasn't in a marriage anymore. I was in a lease. One she was waiting to expire. When she finally left, it was on a Thursday morning. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just said, "I think I need space to find who I am." I nodded, already knowing what that meant. She took her clothes, her makeup, a few personal items. Left behind the books she never read and the ceramic vases she bought on sale, but told followers were artisan-made. She left everything else. The furniture, the TV, the mattress I custom-ordered, even the wine fridge I surprised her with on our 4th anniversary. At first, I thought that was closure. A clean cut. But a week later, she started calling. Not to apologize. Not even to talk. She wanted to know if I'd be reasonable about the house. I was. Reasonable enough to remind her the deed had my name on it. That the refinancing we talked about never went through, because I never signed. And that's when the war started. Passive-aggressive posts. Healing doesn't start until you walk away from the pain. Followed by pictures of her lounging in the house, my house, with Bryant now cropping up in the background. He was always shirtless. Always smirking. Like he earned something. Then came the furniture rearrangement. She replaced the framed wedding photo above the fireplace with abstract art that looked like someone spilled ink and pretended it was deep. The bookshelf I built by hand? Replaced with neon LED signs. The piano I spent a year saving for? Covered in fake plants and crystals she once mocked when her sister used them. It was more than disrespect. It was rewriting. As if she could wipe away my fingerprints and republish the narrative with herself as the triumphant main character. But here's the thing. I don't lose sleep over liars. I plan around them. Every time she posted something from the living room, I paid attention to details. The shoes in the background. The jacket on the chair. Whether Brian's car was parked in the driveway. I started documenting. Screenshots. Timestamps. Everything. Not because I wanted to win her back. God, no. But because I knew what was coming. People like Sierra always overreach. They confuse entitlement with ownership. And she must have forgotten what I do for a living. I close contracts. I read the fine print. I build things that last. Her mistake wasn't just underestimating me. It was forgetting who the foundation was all along. I leaned my head against the car window as we hit the freeway, watching the buildings shrink behind us, and I thought about the next step. Malik had already offered to fly in. Just say the word. Francis, my lawyer, had begun the paperwork. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even hurt. That phase had passed. What I felt now was colder. Sharper. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. And Sierra had just gifted me a front-row seat to her unraveling. It's funny how she thought the house was the prize. But what she didn't know, the house was never the reward. The silence that followed when I took everything back, that would be. I was midway through responding to a client email when the first photo hit my inbox. It was a grainy selfie of Bryant, standing in my kitchen, flexing his biceps with a smug grin on his face. Behind him, on the granite counter I personally picked out and paid for, was my monogrammed coffee mug. The caption on the image, clearly added with some Instagram story sticker, read, "Morning fuel at the new spot flexed biceps hot beverage #blessed life." It was my kitchen, my mug, my house. I didn't flinch. Didn't let my face betray a thing. Instead, I closed the laptop gently, leaned back in the chair, and stared at the ceiling of the WeWork conference room I'd booked for the week. Outside, Atlanta traffic groaned along with late afternoon horns and sirens, but inside, everything was still. This wasn't the first photo. It wouldn't be the last. But it confirmed something I already suspected. They weren't just squatting in my house. They were trying to humiliate me from within it. That afternoon, my inbox kept filling with alerts and nonsense. A canceled delivery for the wine fridge I ordered last year. A backdated invoice from some made-up plumbing repair. A message from a vendor I'd never heard of claiming I owed $3,800 for design consultation services Sierra had apparently requested and attached to my name. Even the emails were petty, unpolished. They'd forgotten I don't scare easily. Then came the Instagram posts. Bryant again, this time lifting weights in my garage. Shirtless, as usual. The caption, "Hustle never sleeps. Neither do I." #grind culture. He made sure the license plate of my classic car was visible in the background, like a subtle little screw you to me. I guess he thought I'd lose sleep over his $10 dumbbells and dollar store bravado. But it was Sierra's post that sealed the deal. She uploaded a story, a video of her twirling in the master bedroom, music blaring in the background. The walls I painted were now plastered in garish decals. She captioned it, "Fresh energy. Toxic-free zone. Finally living. Toxic-free." Right. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. That was never my style. You don't announce your moves when the real play is already in motion. Instead, I called 2 people. Malik answered on the second ring. "Saw the post," he said, "no greeting necessary. Dude's in your house like he owns it." "Yeah, and she's letting him. You want me to fly in?" "Not yet, but soon." Next, I called Francis Vega, my attorney. Francis didn't waste time with pleasantries either. She always got right to it. "Is this about the kitchen selfie or the gym video?" I smirked. "You saw those." I follow her burner. She forgets I know her maiden name. Some people don't understand how algorithms work. Francis had a folder ready. She'd been documenting, too. "I want you to gather everything," I told her. "Every post, every comment, every invoice, every unauthorized use of my name, my property, my accounts." There was a pause. I could almost hear the smile in her voice. "They want a war," she said. I nodded slowly. "Let's give them paperwork." And that's when it all shifted. No more waiting. No more hoping they'd trip over their own pettiness and fall. I was done giving grace. I wanted precision now. Francis began the process of compiling a report. Digital trespass. Unauthorized use of private property. Defamation. And yes, financial fraud. Sierra had made charges on our shared card, charges I never approved, even after the separation began. She bought a new couch, had a spa day at a resort in Buckhead, even subscribed to 2 different PR services, probably to help manage her image when everything imploded. I sent Francis every receipt I could find. Bank statements. Screenshots. Photo evidence. I didn't just want to remove them from the house. I wanted to do it in a way that made the floor shake beneath their feet. The next day, Malik called me again. "They're getting louder," he said. "Bryant tagged me in something. Don't even know how he found me. He wants a reaction. He's gonna get one. Just not the one he wants." Malik was right. These weren't taunts. They were confessions disguised as victory laps. Every smug post, every overexposed story was evidence. Sierra thought she could play the role of wounded woman, rebuilding herself after being stifled by a controlling man. But she forgot something critical. I never once silenced her. Never once told her who she had to be. I funded the dream she couldn't even define. She turned around and tried to erase me. Tried to rewrite the history of our marriage in hashtags and captions. But I had the receipts. 3 days later, Francis sent me a secure file. Inside were neatly labeled folders, evidence, digital trespass, invoices, statements, posts. She included a note. "This is the foundation. Shall we build?" I replied, "Let's raise the roof." Still, I didn't respond publicly. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't subtweet. That's not my language. My fluency is in silence, documentation, strategy, and timing. They thought I was quiet because I was weak. But silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's just the breath before the blow. I closed my laptop that night, stood in front of the hotel mirror, and looked at myself. Same eyes, same posture, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't watching anymore. I was collecting, and soon, I'd be delivering. It came through just after sunrise, barely 6 hours after I'd fallen asleep. The subject line was in all caps. Urgent, call immediately. No greeting, no fluff. Just a message from Francis that read, "Sierra's attorney just called. Something's wrong. Very wrong. Call me the second you see this." I stared at the screen for a full minute. My hotel room was still dark, the only light coming from the blue glow of my laptop and the sliver of sunrise pressing through the blackout curtains. I hadn't even gotten to the part where I groaned or stretched or made coffee. The words just sat there, urgent and quiet, like a loaded gun on the table. Something was wrong, but that didn't scare me. What made me sit up, straighten my back, and feel that tight coil of anticipation in my chest was the phrasing. They overplayed their hand. I reached for my phone, called Francis immediately. No hesitation. She picked up mid-ring, her voice clipped. "Alert." "I was about to call again," she said. "You sitting down?" I was already moving, pacing the room in slow, deliberate steps. "Hit me." Francis sighed. Not the kind of sigh that says she's tired, but the kind that means something messy just got dropped in her lap, and she was already loading the cleanup crew. "Sierra tried to remortgage the house," she said. "She forged your digital signature. They caught it when the notary called your old office to confirm a few details, and someone mentioned you left 2 months ago." I didn't speak, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because my mind was already moving, stacking timelines, calculating the implications, lining up each move like a game of chess played in reverse. "She tried to remortgage the house." I repeated, slow and flat. "Yeah, and the bank flagged it." Her lawyer called me in a panic. He didn't admit anything directly, but you could hear it in his voice. He's trying to walk it back, hoping to settle this quietly. I let out a low laugh. "They don't get to play quiet anymore." "Nope," Francis said. "They tried it. They failed. And now we move." There was a pause between us. She was waiting for my next sentence, probably wondering whether I wanted to blow it up or bury it. My answer was neither. I didn't want noise or destruction. I wanted clarity and impact, and I wanted it to be seen. "Let's get loud," I said. "How loud can we make this?" Francis chuckled. "I've already drafted a preliminary complaint for wire fraud and attempted title theft. I'll hold on the criminal charges for now, but we're definitely alerting the authorities and submitting formal notice to the county. Once that happens, it becomes public record." That was exactly what I needed to hear. Public record. Not rumors. Not vague accusations passed between friends and filtered through social media shade. Real consequences, with signatures and timestamps. "Good," I said. "Let her explain that to her podcast audience." I sat back on the edge of the bed, exhaled, and let the truth settle in. Sierra didn't just cross a line. She detonated it. All that talk about healing and peace and new beginnings? Smoke. She thought she was clever, slipping forged documents past people who wouldn't bother to double-check. But she'd forgotten that I don't leave details behind. I built the foundation of our life with precision. I didn't just buy the house. I kept records, receipts, backups of every interaction. And now, they were coming in handy. After I hung up with Francis, I sat there for a moment, staring at the muted television across the room. The screen reflected the pale light from the window, casting a distorted silhouette of myself. It felt surreal. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just still, like the eye of a storm that hadn't passed yet, but was definitely turning back in my direction. I thought about Sierra's face during that video call, the smug tilt of her chin, the way she practically purred when she told me I didn't have a home anymore. She believed it. She really believed she could take something I built, rewrite the story, and live in it like it was hers. Bryant probably thought he'd won something too. A house, a lifestyle, a woman who liked to spin drama into identity. But what they both failed to realize is that this was never about property. It was about power. And I never gave mine away. I just stepped back long enough to see how far they'd fall without it. I opened my phone, scrolled through Sierra's Instagram stories again. Still up, still spinning the fantasy. Beach photos with captions about new chapters and healing energy. She was smiling like the universe had just handed her a clean slate. But behind that smile was a legal time bomb ticking louder by the hour. And I didn't even need to lift a finger to light it. She did that all by herself. I spent the rest of that morning outlining next steps. I forwarded the bank notification to Francis, sent her a folder of financial records, transfers Sierra had made from our joint account after the separation, screenshots of messages where she mentioned getting her share. I also sent Francis the notarized copy of the deed from when I purchased the house. I wanted everything lined up, clean, undeniable. By noon, Francis called back. The bank is officially flagging the file. They're launching a fraud investigation on their end. Sierra's lawyer asked if we'd be open to a private resolution. I didn't even let her finish. No, I said. No more behind the scenes. No more letting them operate in the shadows. They wanted this messy. Let's give them headlines. Francis laughed again, low and delighted. That's what I hoped you'd say. Let me handle it. You just sit back and enjoy the show. I smiled for the first time in what felt like days. Not a bitter smile. A knowing one. Because this wasn't revenge. This was a reckoning. And the beauty of reckoning is that it doesn't shout. It whispers. It builds. And when it arrives, it leaves nothing the same. Sierra thought she changed the locks. Thought she shut me out. But what she really did was lock herself into a lie with a paper trail that led right back to me. And now, it was time to let the silence speak. Francis didn't mince words when she laid it out for me. I was sitting at a coffee shop just off Peachtree Street, a double espresso cooling beside my laptop, when her call came through. Her tone was measured, lawyer calm, but beneath it, I could hear the sharp edge of satisfaction. She lived for this kind of thing. And frankly, so did I. Sierra forged your digital signature on a refinance agreement last month, she said flatly. The bank's internal fraud team flagged it after a notary couldn't verify your employment status. They cross-checked it with your old firm, found you left weeks ago, and kicked it up the chain. I didn't say anything at first. Just let that settle. Because that's not a misstep. That's not some petty jab on social media or a trashy quote about reclaiming your life. That's a federal crime. She forged my name? I said slowly, chewing the words like I needed to taste each syllable. Digitally, Francis confirmed. Used a previous document with your signature to replicate it. But she didn't account for the fact that the new agreement had a different clause, one that required your in-person verification. A new compliance rule the bank implemented last quarter. I smiled, leaned back in my chair, and watched the people outside walk by like they weren't missing the best story unfolding just a few feet away. Let me guess, I said. The clause is mandatory. Absolutely, Francis replied. And failure to meet that verification step automatically invalidates the document, which means the refinance never legally occurred. But that's not even the juicy part. I raised my eyebrows. There's more. Oh, there's always more, she said. When they flagged the fraud, the bank started digging. Turns out Sierra and her new sidekick attempted to access equity funds from the refinance. As in, they tried to pull cash from the house's value. Which again, isn't hers to pull from. That's wire fraud and attempted title theft. Both are felonies. And with digital evidence, timestamps, IP logs, we've got them nailed to the floor. That was the moment I stopped sipping the espresso and finally leaned forward. How loud can we make this? I asked. Francis laughed, not politely. The real, gleeful kind. We're already at stage 3. I filed a formal complaint with the county clerk's office, alerted the Financial Crimes Division at the DA's office, and sent Sierra's lawyer a copy of the forged document with a note that said, and I quote, "Your client is playing in traffic with a blindfold." I closed my eyes for a second, just letting it all land. The lies, the arrogance, the entitlement, and now, the paper trail they never thought anyone would follow. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It hadn't been for a while. It was about the principle, the audacity of someone who'd been carried, who had every chance to walk away clean, but instead chose to set the whole bridge on fire with a can of lighter fluid and a smile. I opened my laptop again and pulled up the deed. My name, my signature, clear as crystal. Not a joint title, not a co-ownership, just me. You think they'll try to spin this? I asked Frances. Oh, of course, she said. Her attorney already floated the confusion defense. Claimed Sierra didn't understand what she was signing, thought you'd given verbal consent. Standard smoke and mirrors. But it won't stick. I don't want a settlement, I said. Not a dime. Not a sit-down. Not a compromise. Then we press forward, she replied, calm as a scalpel. Full legal exposure. We can file for a restraining order. Force eviction. And we go public. I could already see it. The way Sierra's story would unravel the moment the facts hit the surface. She'd spent the last few months pretending she was some kind of phoenix rising from the ashes, painting me as the toxic ex, the burden she'd finally shed so she could step into her full potential. But beneath all that soft-filtered Instagram poetry was a fraud, a criminal, and a coward who thought paperwork could be faked like a vacation photo. As I left the cafe, walking down the street toward the rental car I'd parked half a block away, my phone buzzed again. A message from Malik. Malik. Saw the story she posted. Beachfront. Caption said, "Earn not given." You want me to respond? Me. No. Let her talk. We're about to drown her in facts. The sun was high now, and the heat rolled off the pavement like breath. I climbed into the car, turned on the AC, and sat there with my hands on the wheel for a full minute before starting the engine. I thought about all the nights I stayed up filling out forms, fielding investor calls, adjusting expense spreadsheets while Sierra watched reality TV in the next room, claiming she couldn't sleep until the energy felt right. I thought about how I funded her Reiki certification, her yoga retreat, even her therapy sessions, because I believed healing mattered. And I thought about how she repaid it, by trying to steal the roof over my head. But the part that hit the hardest? She thought she could get away with it. She thought I wouldn't fight, that I was too decent, too measured, too non-confrontational. She didn't understand. There's nothing more dangerous than a calm man with receipts. Frances called again later that afternoon. Media outlets? She asked. We could leak the court filings. Won't use your name. Just local man stops attempted title theft from ex-wife. Could tie it into a broader discussion about real estate fraud. Perfect, I said. Let them be loud. Are you sure? She asked. It's going to get ugly. I smiled. Good. I want ugly. I want everyone to see exactly what entitlement looks like when it hits a wall called consequence. That night, I went back to the hotel, poured myself a drink, and sat by the window watching the city blink awake under the stars. Sierra thought she won something when she changed the locks. But all she really did was lose the key. They were in Cabo when the court documents landed. I know because Sierra's Instagram story said so. White sand, turquoise waves, her legs stretched on a beach lounger while a cocktail shimmered in her hand. Bryant stood behind her in one of those obnoxious linen shirts wide open like he thought he was a model in a resort ad. The caption read, "Healing in Paradise. Letting go, letting light in." Right. They didn't know yet. I was sitting on the patio of my Austin rental, drink in hand, when Frances called. We filed everything, she said without preamble. The restraining order was approved. The cease and desist is ready to go. And I sent the press statement to 3 real estate blogs this morning. Nothing sensational, just facts. Your name's redacted, but trust me, they'll know exactly who it's about. I nodded slowly, letting her words settle into the silence. Good, I said. And the blogs? They're hungry. It'll be up within the hour. She paused, and I could hear her typing. And Sierra's lawyer responded, by the way, with panic. Asked if we'd reconsider a private mediation. Said the situation had escalated too quickly. I laughed under my breath. Funny how fast things move when it's not on their terms. Frances sighed. I'll keep you posted. But make no mistake, we're controlling the narrative now. After I hung up, I sat there, watching the sky shift from gold to pink. It was quiet, but the kind of quiet that hums beneath your ribs. The kind of quiet that knows what it's holding back. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Malik. Malik, bro, check Bryant's page. It's gone. Everything. I opened Instagram and sure enough, user not found. His profile was deleted, wiped clean. The man who couldn't stop flexing in my garage, posting shirtless videos with motivational captions, had vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Then came the calls. 2 missed ones from a number I hadn't saved. But I knew it. I stared at the screen for a long second before it lit up again, this time, a voicemail. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. The third call came from my mother. I picked that one up. Her voice was hesitant. Jordan, honey. Sierra called me. I stayed quiet. She was crying. Said people were messaging her, commenting, accusing her of stealing from you. She did, I said simply. She just didn't think anyone would hold her accountable. I know, my mother said gently. But she's still the woman you married. Are you sure you want this going public? She made it public the moment she posted selfies in a house that doesn't belong to her, I said. I just gave the truth a microphone. There was a pause. She didn't argue. She knew better. She'd watched Sierra during the marriage, watched her control the room, deflect accountability, spin every disagreement into a performance of victimhood. My mother was quiet, but never blind. I'm proud of you, she said finally. Just be careful. Sometimes when people lose the spotlight, they get desperate. I'm not afraid of desperate, I replied. I'm just done being quiet. By the time I checked the blogs, the posts were already gaining traction. Attempted mortgage fraud at local luxury property. Anonymous source confirms legal action, digital forgery, equity theft. In the rise of real estate deception in divorce battles, they weren't just reading, they were sharing. Commenters dissected the details, speculated, even started piecing together who it might be. Someone posted screenshots of Sierra's beach photos next to a Zillow listing of my property and captioned it, "Tropical lies built on stolen drywall." Petty? Absolutely. But sometimes petty is justice with lipstick on. Later that evening, Francis texted, Bryant's employer just called to confirm the accuracy of the complaint. Guess the wellness company wants to stay out of scandal. I smiled. That part was almost too easy. When you act like nothing can touch you, you forget how fast consequences move when they finally catch up. And Sierra? Her silence said more than any post could. Her story stopped. No more affirmations. No more crystal bathwater photos. Just stillness. The kind that comes when the mask starts slipping and there's no one left to perform for. I poured a second glass of bourbon and turned my phone face down. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was resolution. A slow settling of weight I didn't even know I was carrying until it was gone. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to stop pretending she didn't cause this. That she was a victim of circumstances, of distance, of incompatibility. No, she was the architect of her own collapse. Bryant just moved the furniture. As the night deepened, I sat outside listening to cicadas and the occasional passing car, thinking about the difference between control and peace. Sierra had always tried to control the narrative, what we looked like, what people thought, how polished our life appeared from the outside. She curated our marriage like a brand deal. I was the product, useful, silent, unseen. But now I was the author of the chapter she thought she could write without me. There was no explosive confrontation, no messy viral video or screaming match on the porch, just paperwork. Just a press release and a court filing and a digital trail of lies Sierra had built and hoped no one would follow. But I did, every step. And now, as the dust settled, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. This wasn't about getting even. This was about getting free. When I pulled into the driveway, the air felt different. Not heavier, not tense, just final. The kind of air that settles before the last scene of a play. The one where the masks come off, and there's nothing left to pretend. The deputy stood near the edge of the lawn, arms crossed, sunglasses on despite the early shade of morning. His cruiser idled at the curb. He gave me a nod as I stepped out of the rental. "Got the papers?" he asked. I pulled the folded court order from my jacket pocket and handed it over without a word. He skimmed it, glanced at the house, then back at me. "You want me to knock or you want the honors?" I looked at the house, my house. The front porch still had the hanging fern basket Sierra insisted on. One of the wooden chairs was cracked now. The welcome mat, once clean, was covered in leaves and dirt. Funny how fast things decay without care. "I'll knock," I said, "but I don't think they're here." I was right. The house was empty. Not quiet, not clean. Empty like a battlefield after the smoke clears. The locks had been changed, of course, but I had a locksmith scheduled. Jerry showed up 5 minutes later in a battered red van, toolbox in hand, a thick gray beard, and a friendly nod. He didn't ask questions. Just looked at the paperwork, then at the lock, then said, "Give me 10. While he worked, I waited. Malik pulled up in his black SUV right on time, stepped out in jeans and a sweatshirt, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You ready for this?" he asked. "Been ready," I said. We stepped inside once Jerry gave the all-clear, and for a second I just stood there, taking it all in. The walls were the same shade of soft gray we'd agreed on, but there were scuffs now, scratches, small dents. The hardwood floors I paid extra to have refinished, covered in muddy boot prints and dried spills. My custom piano, black lacquer, a gift to myself after my first 6-figure quarter, was scratched across the lid, as if someone had dragged luggage across it. I didn't say anything. I just walked through the living room and into the kitchen. Cabinets left open. My chef's knives gone. Half-empty bottles of cheap rose sat on the counter. A stained cutting board leaned in the sink like it had given up trying to be cleaned. The fridge door had new magnets on it. Fridge poetry pieces scattered into nonsense phrases. Want more silence. Feel less now. It looked like someone tried to be deep and failed. Malik walked up behind me. "Looks like a haunted Airbnb," he said. I laughed, a short, dry sound. "Feels like one too." We kept going. The master bedroom had been rearranged. The headboard was tilted off-center, as if someone had kicked it loose. The nightstand on my side was missing. In its place, a folding tray with incense ash burned into it. There were holes in the wall where my framed photos had once hung. Sierra replaced them with abstract canvases, 3 colorless smears in oversized gold frames. Art for people who like to sound interesting but never feel anything. In the guest room, boxes had been left behind. Cheap makeup, fake eyelashes, unopened branding kit, booklets for some podcasts that would never launch. In the garage, Bryant's gym equipment was still partially there. 2 dumbbells, a torn resistance band, and a protein powder tub on its last scoop. But the car was gone. No more of his greasy fingerprints on my vintage Mustang. We stood there, just me and Malik, quiet for a long moment. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I am now. Because this was what they left behind. Not damage. Not loss. Just proof. Proof of carelessness. Of temporary people trying to live permanent lives. They played house and thought they were rewriting mine. But they were never builders. Just squatters in a story they didn't own. "Let's make a list," I said, pulling out my phone. "Everything damaged. Everything missing." "Inventory?" Malik asked. "No," I said. "Blueprint." We spent the next hour walking through the house with deliberate steps. Every scratch. Every missing item. Every neglected space. I didn't feel anger. Just clarity. This wasn't a ruin, it was a reset. A new beginning built on the bones of a lie they couldn't maintain. By noon, Frances arrived in a sleek black sedan. She stepped out with a folder in one hand and sunglasses in the other. "Place looks worse than the pictures," she said. "But it's yours again. Officially. Permanently." I nodded. "Thanks to you." "We're not done," she added. "Bryant's employer sent confirmation. They're cutting ties." And Sierra's lawyer called again. Said she wants to have a conversation. I raised an eyebrow. Now she wants to talk? Now that she's run out of places to hide, Frances replied. I looked around the room one last time. Then I turned to both of them. "I want to throw a party." Malik snorted. "You serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "Not some big crowd. Just the people who matter. The ones who saw through everything and stayed. The ones who told me I wasn't crazy when I started doubting my own instincts." Frances smiled. "A housewarming party." "No," I said. "A reclaiming." We got to work. Cleaners came that afternoon. Malik called a local caterer. Frances sent out quiet invitations, friends, a few business partners, my sister, the team from my last startup. No headlines. No flashy posts. Just real people walking into a space that finally felt like mine again. And when the party happened, just 2 days later, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about presence. It was about walking through my front door with a clear head, no more pretending, no more looking over my shoulder. It was about laughter in the right places, music that felt honest, and voices that didn't have to be filtered for PR. Bryant and Sierra had their moment in the sun. Now it was my house again. My life again. And this time, the locks were changed for good. 3 days after the housewarming, the letter arrived. It came from Sierra's attorney, sealed in a thick manila envelope marked Confidential Settlement Proposal. The courier handed it to Frances directly at her office downtown, and she texted me immediately. "You'll want to see this one in person." I drove straight there. Her office was sleek, quiet, and bathed in the kind of lighting that made people confess more than they intended. Frances sat behind her desk, flipping through the pages like she was reviewing a menu she'd already memorized. When I walked in, she motioned to the seat across from her without looking up. "You ready for this?" she asked. "I've been ready," I said, settling in. She slid the packet across the desk toward me. "They're waving the white flag, but it's more like a paper towel than a flag." I scanned the document. The language was crafted to sound conciliatory, but the core message was weak. They were offering a mutual resolution agreement to avoid further public escalation, as if this was some minor misunderstanding between friends instead of a cascade of fraud, theft, and public lies. The letter tiptoed around any admission of guilt, but the intent was obvious. They wanted out. Quietly. Quickly. They're asking you to drop all civil action, agree to a non-disclosure clause, and refrain from further comment to the press, Frances said, her voice dry. In exchange, they'll issue a vague apology, return the few assets they still have, and walk away without a fight. I chuckled. "They think I want this to go away?" "No," she said. "They just hope you're tired enough to accept it." But I wasn't tired. I was sharper than I'd been in months. Rebuilding gave me clarity. Watching their facade crumble gave me perspective. This wasn't about revenge. It never really was. It was about making sure that people like them didn't get to rewrite the ending just because they regretted the script. Frances leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. "So, you want to counter?" I didn't even hesitate. "With receipts." That night, we drafted our reply, not just with words, but with weight. Frances attached over 24 exhibits to the demand letter. We started with the basics, the canceled wine fridge order with my original payment receipt. Then we included screenshots of every unauthorized credit card charge Sierra had made post-separation, spa treatments, wellness consultations, and even a $1,200 retreat to Sedona where she apparently went to realign her chakras. While I dealt with a forensic accountant. Next came the therapy bills, 3 years' worth. I paid every cent of those sessions, the same sessions where I sat and listened to Sierra talk about how emotionally unavailable I was while I silently buried my career stress and financial strain to keep her lifestyle afloat. We included all of it. The kicker was the formal criminal complaint. Frances had filed it with the district attorney's office the same day the restraining order was granted, and while it was still under review, the language was unmistakable. It detailed Sierra's attempt to refinance the house under forged credentials, complete with a forged signature, digital IP trail, and notarization attempt. It named her directly, and it included a warning that should the civil process not result in full restitution, we would pursue the criminal route without hesitation. The final page of the letter offered 2 choices, Option A and Option B. Option A. Sierra issues a public apology admitting to her role in the financial misconduct and public defamation. She returns all stolen and purchased assets, including any items bought using joint accounts after the separation. She signs a permanent no-contact agreement. She withdraws all social media content referencing me, directly or indirectly. Option B. We proceed to civil court for damages, fraud, and emotional distress. We release all evidence to the public record, including emails, text messages, and financial documentation. Frances forwards the criminal complaint to a journalist we knew personally, who was already sniffing around the story. We expose Bryant's falsified wellness coaching credentials to his new company, complete with screenshots of his training certification from a non-accredited online course. Frances looked me dead in the eye when we finished reading it. "You sure you don't want to leave some space for compromise?" "No," I said. She was bold when she thought I was weak. Let her see what happens when I stop playing nice. We sent the letter by courier. Signed, stamped, delivered. 48 hours later, Sierra chose Option A. Barely. Her lawyer sent back a one-paragraph apology, carefully worded but legally binding. It read more like a hostage note than a confession, but it was enough. She agreed to remove all defamatory posts and comments from her public channels. She agreed to transfer the remaining funds, roughly $12,000, back into the joint account. She also agreed to deliver a set of physical items, a designer watch I bought during our honeymoon, a framed photo of my late father that used to sit on my desk, and the last 2 payments from a vendor we'd both invested in before the split. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was the surrender I needed. Bryant didn't respond. But the day after the agreement came through, Francis received a notice from his former employer. His contract was terminated due to inconsistencies in employment documentation. It didn't take much. A simple whisper in the right inbox. That's the thing about playing games in someone else's house. When they take the roof off, you've got nowhere to hide. I didn't feel joy, just peace. Malik came over that evening. We sat on the back deck with drinks, overlooking the yard where Sierra once said she wanted to build a koi pond but never followed through. He handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of one of Sierra's old Instagram captions, "Never let anyone make you feel replaceable." I smirked. She's probably scrubbing her whole feed right now. Let her, he said. Truth is already out. We sat in silence for a while after that. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just the kind of silence that exists when there's nothing left to fight for, and everything you lost has been replaced with clarity. I thought about all the nights I spent wondering where things went wrong. All the hours I gave trying to fix what couldn't be saved. But none of that mattered anymore. I didn't need closure. I didn't even need her to feel regret. All I needed was space. Space to rebuild. Space to breathe. And now, I had all the space in the world. It was a Wednesday morning. Quiet, overcast, with the kind of stillness that usually comes after a storm and before the world remembers to start spinning again. I stood outside the house that had once felt like a museum of all my compromises, staring up at the same white trim I'd touched up 3 summers ago with a shaky ladder and a half-used can of paint. But it wasn't the same anymore. The ghosts were gone. The shadows had no names. And this time, the key I held in my hand wasn't one someone else had changed without my permission. Jerry, the locksmith, stood beside me, hands in his pockets, nodding like a man who understood the weight of what locks really meant. Not just metal and pins, but control, ownership, peace. You want a double cylinder? He asked. No, I said. I still on the front door. Just strong, quiet, clean. He got to work without another word. I stepped inside, the faint smell of pine cleaner and fresh paint already replacing the perfume of chaos Sierra had left behind. My footsteps echoed on the newly polished floor. No piles of mail on the counter. No chipped candles melted into the mantel. Just air and light, and the sound of a home resetting itself. In the kitchen, a half glass of bourbon sat waiting on the island. I'd poured it that morning before Jerry arrived. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to mark the moment. There's something ritualistic about quiet victories. Something sacred in celebrating the end of a long war with nothing but silence, a drink, and the creak of new hinges on old doors. I took a sip and exhaled. No bitterness. No lingering aftertaste of what had been. Just smooth finality. The court filings were done. Francis had officially closed the civil case, and Sierra's remaining payments were processed through the joint account we'd both agreed to dissolve afterward. Her apology, sterile, legal, and void of genuine remorse, was now filed in a folder labeled Resolved. I wouldn't revisit it. I wouldn't reread it. But I'd keep it, just in case memory tried to soften what she did. The hardest part of all of it wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization of how far I'd let myself bend to keep something that had stopped being mine long before it ended. Love, real love, doesn't humiliate. It doesn't hide in gyms or lie through photo captions. And it sure as hell doesn't try to steal the roof over your head and call it healing. After Sierra and Bryant vanished from the scene, I took my time rebuilding. No announcements. No fireworks. Just careful, deliberate moves. I sold the equity in one of my older startups, one she never cared to ask about when we were married, and used part of it to buy a second property in Austin. Nothing flashy. A modern craftsman tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, walking distance from coffee shops and bookstores. I furnished it slowly, choosing everything myself for the first time in years. No approval needed. No aesthetic matching the feed. Just comfort. Warmth. A place I could breathe. That house became my retreat, my peace. But this one, the house, this was still my foundation. And it deserved closure. I walked through the rooms like I was meeting them for the first time. The living room was no longer draped in abstract canvases and faux boho nonsense. I had the walls repainted a deep slate blue, anchoring, quiet, a contrast to the chaos it had once held. I rehung the framed photo of my father above the mantel. It was the one thing Sierra had never understood, why I kept that photo in the living room. She once called it too somber. But that photo had been my compass through every storm. And now, it was home again. In the hallway, I paused at the small alcove that used to hold her vision boards and crystals, symbols of aspirations that changed monthly, depending on which influencer she followed. That space was empty now. I'd thought about putting a shelf there, maybe a piece of art. But today, I liked it empty. A blank wall can be an act of healing. In the garage, I stared at the place where Bryant used to film his shirtless gym videos. The equipment was gone. I had the floors scrubbed and resealed. The Mustang sat parked in the far corner, polished to the kind of shine you only do for yourself, not for anyone else to see. I touched the hood, remembering the night I bought it. The freedom it represented. The way Sierra had once rolled her eyes and called it a midlife crisis starter pack. I'd smiled at her then, too tired to argue. But standing there now, hand on the car, I realized it had never been about the car. It was about space. About having something that was truly mine, untouched by her commentary or her need to curate every moment for clout. Later that evening, I sat on the back deck with my laptop open and the sunset casting orange streaks across the yard. Malik had messaged me earlier. He was flying in next week. Said he wanted to see the place now that the energy had shifted. Francis had also followed up. Sierra's podcast, she wrote, seems to have stalled. No new episodes. Website's down. Looks like it was just another brand phase. Of course it was. I Googled her name for the first time in weeks. Nothing new. No viral moments. No TEDx stage. Just a few lingering blog posts about wellness and rebirth, buried beneath a mountain of noise. Bryant's presence had vanished too. No new employer. No digital footprint. They had gone quiet. Maybe out of shame. Maybe out of strategy. But either way, the silence was its own kind of apology. I closed the laptop. For a while, I just watched the light fade and let the stillness wrap around me. I wasn't waiting for a knock at the door. I wasn't flinching at the sound of my phone. There were no legal meetings to schedule. No receipts to gather. No rage to stifle. Just me. And that's what freedom felt like. Not escape. Not revenge. Just a life no longer dictated by someone else's damage. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was finally honest. No more fake smiles. No more filtered captions. No more pretending to be the villain in someone else's redemption arc. This time, I'd written the ending, and it didn't need applause. Just a good lock, a quiet house, and a life rebuilt on my terms. It had been a year, 12 months since I stood on the porch of my own house with a locksmith beside me and the weight of betrayal still clinging to my shoulders. 12 months since the forged documents, the fake invoices, the smirking selfies in my kitchen, and the lies dressed up as empowerment. I'd lived the full circle: rage, restraint, release. And now, here I was, standing in a custom-tailored Navy suit, on a stage under golden light, accepting an award for a mentorship program I created for young entrepreneurs. The applause was warm, sincere. The kind that didn't feel performative. This wasn't some charity gala thrown together for optics. It was real, authentic. A room full of people who understood what it meant to build something out of broken pieces and grit. I'd funded the entire program myself, quietly. It wasn't about recognition. It was about giving others what I wish someone had given me back when I was scraping together my first investment pitch over takeout containers and sleep deprivation. The plaque in my hand read, "For visionary leadership and community impact." Simple, solid, not overdone. As I stepped off the stage, I moved through a series of congratulatory handshakes and firm pats on the back. The buzz of conversation filled the ballroom, the scent of champagne and expensive perfume hanging in the air. Somewhere in the background, a jazz trio played an understated rhythm that made the whole evening feel like something from another life. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned slowly, already sensing something off. Not danger, just familiarity I hadn't asked for. And there he was, Bryant. Alone. No smile this time. No smug attitude. No linen shirt. Just a plain gray blazer that didn't quite fit his shoulders and a button-down that looked like it had been ironed in a hurry. His hair was shorter, his face leaner. There was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. The man who once filmed shirtless videos in my garage, who flexed over stolen silverware and posted cryptic captions about winning. Now he looked like someone who didn't quite know where to stand in the room. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said coolly, my voice calm but steady. He gave a small nod. "Didn't expect to come. But I saw your name in the program. And," he glanced down, shuffled his feet. "Just wanted to say, you won." I let the words hang there, not out of surprise, but to give him room to hear what he just said. "You won." I didn't smile. Not yet. I just looked at him, looked through him. "I never played your game," I said, voice low but direct. "I just built my own board." That caught him off guard. He blinked, as if trying to decipher whether it was a jab or a truth. I didn't wait for him to decide. "I wasn't trying to beat you or her," I continued, "because that would have required acknowledging you as competition. And you never were." Bryant nodded once. Slowly. "Yeah, I get that now." "Do you?" I almost asked. But there was no point. This moment wasn't for him. It was for me. "How is she?" I asked, not because I cared, but because I wanted to see if he'd flinch. He did. "Gone," he said. "Left 3 months ago. Said she needed to find herself again." Of course she did. I gave the smallest nod. She was always good at that. Disappearing when things got too real. He didn't defend her. He didn't offer context. Just stood there, in his too tight blazer, a man who had flown too close to someone else's sun and got burned without ever knowing where the heat was coming from. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because even a man like Bryant should know what real structure looks like. "If you ever figure out what you're actually good at," I said, "build it. Don't hijack it." Then I walked away. No dramatic pause. No glance over my shoulder. Just clean steps, forward. I left him standing there, surrounded by the low hum of people who had no idea what kind of chaos once erupted from that man's need for validation. And I didn't feel powerful. I felt done. Completely, quietly done. Back at my table, Malik raised an eyebrow as I sat down. "That him?" he asked. "Yep." "What did he say?" "That I won." Malik chuckled and raised his glass. "Damn right you did." The rest of the night passed in soft waves. Conversations, laughter, a few more handshakes. But my mind wasn't stuck on Bryant or Sierra or anything they'd done. My mind was on the way I felt walking back into my house later that night, no longer with caution or tension in my chest, but with ease. The lights turned on. The hallway was quiet. The photo of my dad still hung above the mantel. The piano had been tuned last week, and the lock clicked shut behind me with the kind of finality that said, "This life is yours again." In the kitchen, I poured myself one last drink. No phone in hand. No camera. No need to capture the moment for anyone else. I toasted the silence. To clarity. To reclamation. And as I stood there, the echoes of the past didn't come rushing back. They stayed exactly where they belonged, behind me. Funny how brave they thought they were. But the quiet ones were the ones they never see coming. And we always leave with the last laugh.